Some members of the government to come forward as well. This is Mr. George Payne, acting Home Affairs Minister, and Hamilton. Minister of Maritime Affairs for Humphrey, acting Attorney General for Wilfred Evans, and Minister of Health,
Ms. Haynes, come.
Lieutenant Colonel.
What is it? Chief of Staff?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
Lieutenant Colonel Jim Henry, the Prime Minister is about to start, so I'll turn over to her right now.
First of all, ladies and gentlemen, let me thank you for being up and listening to us. The all clear would have been given for 5 a.m. Earlier, we would have allowed for conditional clearance for the protective sector, services sector, and also for the airport. I'm going to invite different persons to speak, but before I do so, I just want to say that we need to give thanks, and above all else, it isn't only giving thanks at my level. I am not as equipped as Minister Jordan to do the deep prayers, but be assured that I have said my own, and I'd like each Barbadian to say their own according to their own faith, because from all reports, there's virtually no damage. But it is still early, and we are cognizant that we will continue to encourage persons to reach out to the DEM over the course of today. But less than 10 incidents have been reported, and they really all predominantly are fallen trees. There's only one instance of house roof, and not even with full damage, but I'll have each of the various people speak to those things as we go forward. So without further, I'd like to invite Ms. Hines to speak to the reported damages thus far. I will say to you that I took the precaution when we came down, because we were in two different locations. When we came from our location, I came through Bridgetown just now, and I specifically went to the site opposite London Bourne that we would have worked to clean up. The seas are still very much high, and persons will have to take caution and continue to take caution in the water. The careenage is full and high as well. And the rain is still falling. It's inclement weather, but it's the kind of inclement weather we're accustomed to and can deal with. So we believe that normal service can resume based on all that the Met Office have advised us. I'll have some things to say at the end, lessons learned and things that we will do differently at the end. But I'd like to invite Ms. Hines at this stage, please.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Prime Minister. Good morning, Barbados. We started the activation of the National Emergency Operations Center yesterday morning at 8 a.m. And during the course of the activation, we had a total of 25 agencies here, including public sector, private sector, and volunteers. We had 9 reported incidents. In the parish of Christchurch, we had a fallen tree and fallen utility pole, down power lines. St. Andrew, fallen power line. 2 in St. George, fallen tree, 2 fallen trees. In St. John, we also had a fallen tree in Coach Hill. In St. Michael, there was a fallen wall in Black Rock, just across from the Chafette there. And in St. Peter, in French Village, there was a house, the roof, the galvanized started to lift from the particular roof, and there was flooding in the bathroom. The lady requested evacuation, and the police would have assisted with that. There were also 2 fallen trees one in Vault Road, St. Thomas, and 1 in Upper Canefield. All of these reported incidents They were assigned to agencies spanning from the Roving Response Team, the Barbados Light and Power, of course, for the utility poles. The Ministry of Transport and Works would have responded to the fallen wall, and the roving team, they would have assisted in the field with the fallen trees. So that was the extent of the reports. You can call 438-7575 to report any further damage with respect to the system that has passed. Thank you.
So would you like to add anything to the signs?
Prime Minister, I think I would like to tell the public of Barbados that we certainly commend you for obeying the instructions issued by the government of Barbados, both in terms of national shutdown and everything else in complying. We are blessed today and we are thankful. Certainly I would also want to thank all those who were here from yesterday morning early at the National Emergency Operations Center, and for all the cooperation, all the various agencies and the volunteers in seeing us through what was a potential crisis again.
Thank you. There's some operational details that I'd like to invite ministers to update the country on, and the first would be with respect to the utilities. I'm asking Mr. Abrams to come and just give us an update with respect to the situation with water and light and power, electricity.
Good morning, Barbados. The water situation, there's some outages during the course of the event. Those are due in large measure to the light and power. Sorry. There's some outages during the event, and those are due in large measure to the power failures by light and power. We had independent generation capacity, but it had to be manually switched over. So most of our pumping stations and reservoirs are now operational again. We have one major pump down, so you're likely to get some low pressure in some areas of St. Joseph, some areas of Christchurch, but we're trying to fill the reservoirs and get everything back up and running. But the Water Authority has done a tremendous job in working through what was a very, very difficult period and getting things back on stream. The Ionics plant should be back online sometime this morning, and that should assist in increasing the pressure and the ability to distribute water to everyone. But for the areas that will experience a lower pressure, the tankers are prepped and ready and should be mobile very, very shortly, within the next hour or so. So just do what you normally do, call in, and we will send the tankers to your area. With respect to light and power experienced some difficulty with 3 feeder lines and some isolated outages. They've repaired the feeder lines. The outages they're trying to address now, most of the outages were actually caused by fuses tripped out by branches and things on power lines, but they're going to have to get to each one individually and get them back and running. But light and power is fully deployed to restore normalcy to Barbados. The affected areas for light and power: Apple Hall, St. Thomas, Atlantic Park, Christchurch, Fort George Heights, St. George, Strathclyde, St. Michael, Pickwick Gap, St. Michael, Bathsheba, St. Andrew, Maynards Ridge, St. Peter, Josie Hill, St. Lucie, The Risk, Graveyard, Greenham Road, Holders Hill, St. James, and River Bay, St. Lucie. But they've assured us that their teams are in the field. They said that as people start to connect back up to the system, they may experience some other difficulties. And if you do, please call 626-9000, 626-9000, and Light and Power will do its best to address all of the issues. But as far as the utilities are concerned, things are on stream to get back up to full capacity by this morning.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Minister Bostwick now to address the issues pertaining to the healthcare system.
Good morning, Barbados. First of all, I think I would certainly like to say a thank you to all of those members of staff of the health services institutions that would have been on duty during the passage of the system to continue to ensure that our patients, our Barbadian people, get the best of health care. The first order of business for us this morning would be to start the process of relocating those patients who were evacuated from the St. Lucie District Hospital and the Elaine Scanterbury Center. And we would like to inform families of patients that their loved ones should be back at their respective institutions by mid-afternoon today. With respect to the primary healthcare system, the polyclinics, all polyclinics, as well as the 24-hour service that is offered out of the Winston Scott Polyclinic, will commence operations at 11 o'clock this morning. That is to give staff sufficient time to get all of the systems up and running in order to be able to receive the first patients or clients to the polyclinics.
Okay. Minister Mo, any issues with relation to the shelters?
Good morning, everyone. The shelters, everything went reasonably well. Once we'd made the adjustments to those shelters that we could not use, they had over 100 people that used the shelters. At the last count, it was 103. Things went smoothly. One or two very minor issues, but quickly resolved. So we believe that once it's a little bit more light, people start to leave the shelters and make their ways back to their respective homes. And of course, once the transport board and those facilities are back up and running, that would also assist in the movement of people out of the shelters. And from there, we will then bring in a cleaning crew to clean the shelters so that we be ready again for use, whether by the staff during the school time, because a lot of the shelters are schools and they're also used for camps as well.
In church.
And church. Oh yes, of course, the churches as well.
Okay. Thank you. I'd like to invite the Royal Barbados Police Force to address any issues over the course of the passage of the storm. Senior Superintendent Boyce.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Good morning, Barbados. It's a pleasure to report that during the passing of Hurricane Storm Doran, there were no reports as relates to security or injury. We would have worked from yesterday on to midnight last night and sustained our patrols. Then we went in and came back at 0 to 30 hours to make sure that our area is well covered. And I want to thank the members of the public on behalf of the Commissioner of Police for their compliance with the directive given by the government of Barbados, and which makes our task easy. We will continue our patrols to ensure that whatever is to be done as relates to transport board and the other entities be back on the road to meet our deadline.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to, Minister Payne, no issues with the housing estate.
From what has been said, good morning, Barbados. It is fairly obvious that housing was not called into attention on this occasion. We did have 18 houses on standby, but those houses have not been utilized because of the fact that it was not necessary. However, as the Prime Minister had said, there may be some instances of flooding, and we have these houses available in the event that they are requested.
Thank you. And Ms. Holder, Acting General Manager of Transport Board, address the startup, please.
Thank you, Madam PM. Good morning, Barbados. We will have already started to deploy our services back into base to make sure that services will be available for the traveling public. We basically will be able to mobilize everyone within 2 to 3 hours, so we will have our first set of services on the road no later than 7, and we anticipate we'll have full rollout the latest 9 o'clock. That being said, we've checked on the road with the team from MTW, and they've not found any flooding anywhere on our major arteries, so we will be able to get buses out on those routes. We'll update this on our website as well after this press conference is finished. Thank you.
I think the importance of that is that last year after the tropical storm, Kurt, you had a number of buses that went down early on.
And that would have been because we were trying to get them out too quickly and we ran into some flood areas So that's why we're asking MTW to double check all the roads for us before we put buses on those roads. We are not able to have buses going down like we did last time. Thank you.
I think, and it's important that the public, we're trying as much as possible to share the level of information with the public so that people understand the process. And as I keep saying, it's not just an abracadabra moment. Minister Humphrey, with respect to the airport, seaport, and tourism, please.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Barbados. We made a decision, as you know, to close the airport, but that was made after intense consultation and conversation, particularly with Gaia Inc. and with Civil Aviation. And before we could reopen the airport, there are a number of things that have to be done, and that those things were done. Particularly, we were tasked to make sure that the runway itself is fully functional. The necessary tests were conducted on the runway, and it has been found to be fully functional. The air traffic controllers also have to make sure that the equipment is functional and working. That is also functional and working. Additionally, Gaia Inc. has to make sure that their equipment is working for landing, for surveillance, and so on, and for navigation. All of the equipment is also fully functional. Because we've done the necessary test, the viewers at the airport will open at 7 a.m. this morning to regular business. There is a notice, it's called a NOTAM, a notice to airmen, which goes out to all the airlines, which basically indicates that the country and that the airport is open, that there are no problems, no hindrances. And that has been issued and disseminated as well. So all of the airlines are aware. The flights from Europe had already made adjustments to come in later, so there will be no further delays anticipated at the airport as well. As it relates to the Bridgetown port, there were no issues there at all. The senior management is already on duty. Staff will be expected to report around 10 a.m. this morning. So there are no issues at the Bridgetown port, and that will be open to business as per usual. And then lastly, in relation to general tourism matters, they were reported through the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association. Senator Grant is here, he'll speak to those issues, but there were, I'm told, with 80% of the hotels reporting, over 6,000 persons, tourists were on the island, and that there were no major issues. There were only 2 who reported to the LESC, and they were accommodated. 2 reported at the airport, and they were also suitably accommodated. There were no issues there. And I would also add quickly that the fishermen have reported no issues in relation to their boats, and that they heeded the call, most of them, to take their boats out of the water. And I would also like to thank Port St. Charles and Port Ferdinand for opening their ports and offering safe harbor to the fishermen who made use of it. Thank you very much.
And to the other pleasure craft.
And to all of the pleasure craft, actually. Thank you.
Senator Grant, any addition to that?
Thank you, Prime Minister. Good morning, Barbados. As Minister Humphrey indicated, there were no major issues with respect to tourism. We did have our plans in place. We were very aware of the number of visitors that we had in all of our hotels and the number of rooms that were available. Fortunately, we didn't need to move anyone, and none of our hotels reported any issues at all with Storm Dorian. So we are extremely happy and satisfied that there's really nothing major to report.
I want to once again repeat how blessed and lucky we are, but I'd like us to, as we give thanks, to also hope that our brothers and sisters in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and in St. Lucia, who are currently now experiencing the conditions of this tropical storm, that they be kept safe, that there be minimal damage, as is the case with Barbados, and to recognize that there will be other countries in the region that may be affected by this storm. What I will say to Barbadians is, and I said it on Sunday, that this was early in the season for this. And we have to be conscious that we are not yet at November 30th, which is the end of the hurricane season. Indeed, we still have 3 full months to go. If ever there was a dry run in preparing ourselves, this effectively could be considered a dry run, and some may even say by the absence of the volume of rain that we had. But in addition to that, it allowed us to be able to mobilize and to focus on some areas, and I'm satisfied that that initial work done on Sunday by the government and the private operators and ordinary citizens made a significant difference to our state of readiness and therefore to the consequences that we would have faced. Anybody who knows Speightstown knows that you only have to spit in Speightstown for Speightstown to flood, and the ability therefore to be able to clear the salt pond as well as to deal with the gullies, the Wim and others that would have caused flooding would be important. Anybody who knows opposite London Bourne knows that even when there is just a heavy rainfall, not a storm, we've had problems there at London Bourne and Pondside, and I went this morning, as I said, to check, and certainly that was not there. Similarly at Brandon's and other areas, and I think we have learned from this exercise. But the bigger issue is how Barbadians respond to keeping around their environment clean. There really is too much littering, and you only needed to go and see what was blocked up in terms of canals. We have to stop using them. Mercifully, the reduction of plastics will help in that effort, but there is still residuals there. Similarly, persons have literally to keep around their house from bush and other large pieces of bulky equipment. This has forced us to be able to move quicker on the issue of bagatelle. We were able to have that matter lifted, and it will be appropriately dealt with by the proper agencies this week so that the bulky waste can continue to go there, and we're looking at a new site in St. Philip. And I want therefore to urge Barbadians that as we continue to move forward, in not just in this season but for our own selves and for the gathering, that let us make it business, our business, priority number one, to clean up this country, and to clean it up in the small things and the large things. And the government is committed to it, and we're going to work with you. The AG is already doing the research with respect to civil penalties for people who will not take responsibility for in front of them. All of us know, our parents, our grandparents, we grew up with them doing what? Cleaning in front, not just our property, but they used to clean the road and the gutter in front of our house. And we need to return to those days. We need to get the plantations cleaning the wells as well, because it will assist in drainage. The last point that I'd like to make before closing off is that in a very real sense, we need to improve how we plan for these events from the point of view that we wait now for the National Hurricane Center to be able to send a hurricane plane, Hunter, into the system. The ones that went into this system went for research purposes of their own, and therefore the data that we expected, or had hoped rather, to come was not obviously there. We are satisfied that we've reached a point where we have to take responsibility for our own affairs. In a very real sense, this is our new normal in a world of climate change. This is something that we are going to have to get accustomed to, because the intensity of storms and the regularity of storms and hurricanes will significantly increase. And therefore, we have to be able to get more accurate data. If you notice, by the time the hurricane is coming close to the United States of America, they can give you all kinds of data about every quadrant and what to expect and what not to expect, etc. We are not a developed country in that sense, but we believe that working with our partners, countries in the region, especially in the Eastern and Southern Caribbean, that we're going to need to find ways of being able to commission for our own selves. We don't need to own an airplane to commission and charter it to go and do the work. So I think that our whole approach to how we treat to the accuracy and to understanding the intensity of these weather systems, and for Barbados in particular. Why? Because we are the first landfall And I used to have a geography teacher who was very clear and said to me, girls, Barbados is in the Atlantic Ocean, not the Caribbean Sea. That's why we don't have the level of hurricanes of others. Now, whether she was right or not, we begin to believe that she was because of the rarity with which we confront these issues as compared to other countries in the region. I'd only like, therefore, to say to Barbadians, don't believe that you've wasted your money in buying the goods and the food items and all of those things, because we are still a good 93, 94 days out from the end of the season. In fact, the season ends when we sing God Bless BIM on Independence Day. Until such time, we have to be alert. And I ask persons, therefore, if you didn't get a chance to clean up around, you do so. If you've acquired stuff that you tin stuff, know that you're going to have to use it, or bottled water, or those kinds of things. I'd like to thank, however, also all who have worked. I am exceedingly proud of the persons who have pulled real weight in the last 36 to 48 hours in government, across the security services. The Chief of Staff is here, he doesn't normally speak. The police are here, the fire service, all of the other protective services, the transport board, and getting people home. If I want to say one thing that I think Barbadians can do better, I had hoped that more people would have gone for gasoline on Sunday rather than yesterday, exacerbating the traffic problem. And perhaps that is something that ordinary citizens will help us do differently next time, so that we don't have that kind of traffic jam from the north when I was in Spikestown. And in every instance, once you pass the gas station, there was free flow of traffic. I'd like to thank the shelter wardens. We take for granted the persons who have to leave home and who come down and take care of these shelters. In some instances, only 2 or 3 people have turned up. In some instances, none. But they had to be there. I'd like to thank all of the persons manning our utilities. Once again, we take it for granted, but utilities are the most vulnerable outside of human life, are the most vulnerable to these weather systems, and they also are at risk because they are the first ones who have to go out and get things ready again. I'd like to thank the healthcare professionals. I'd like to thank everybody, and the private contractors who really helped pull weight. We started from the premise on Sunday that we were not only looking at what government's assets were, but what the entire country had made available to it. The Ministry of Housing and the National Housing Corporation trying to deal with and trying to recover in a difficult situation from infrastructure that has been significantly dilapidated and that has not had the level of maintenance for more than 6-7 years. But at the same time, we have to take care of it because we have thousands of people living in these housing estates. And I'd like to thank you, the media. I made the point from the outset on Sunday that in an era of fake news, you carry an even greater responsibility to guarantee the authenticity, the accuracy of the information that we are sharing with the Barbadian public. And I believe that you have stepped up to the plate with us on this journey. And as we go forward, this is going to be even more important in the society in which we live. So let us give thanks to God, to whoever we worship, but let us also recommit to stay in the course. I didn't want to use that phrase, but I have to stay in the course because we have another 94 days before we can call it quits with respect to this 2019 hurricane season. Are there any questions before we wrap up?
Prime Minister, the level of response to in the shelters, would you say that that's an indication Barbadians are taking these systems or starting to take these systems a lot more seriously?
I think so. I mean, you can't live in the Caribbean and not be concerned. 2017 became a seminal year for us. In fact, that was the year that the notion of climate refugees became even more apparent. When we knew that people left Montserrat and had to be evacuated, we didn't relate to it because that's about volcanoes and Bajans don't really know much about volcanoes. But what happened in Dominica and what happened in Barbuda and St. Martin and other countries in the region, I think shook up everybody. and it is fair to say that you would be foolish not to. For me, I keep making the point, I as a young girl went through Gilbert, so I don't play with hurricanes because I know that today could has easily have been a very different situation. The storm, they had size, it was directly on us. I mean, it defies rational explanation. Everything else about it ought to have suggested that Barbados should have had significant damage. And I want to thank my colleague prime ministers in the region, all of whom in the Eastern Caribbean have been reaching out all night. And some of them are in disbelief when I say that thus far, the reports of the damage are virtually negligible. I do believe that Bajans will take it and continue to take it seriously. And we're far more aware of that thing called climate change. The Amazon is still burning fires. And for me, I'll share this with you personally. The last time I took a vacation was the morning of Hurricane Irma. Irma came, and then Maria. I was so foolish as to believe that I could take some downtime this last week, only now to be interrupted by Tropical Storm Dorian. So I am almost frightened to say that I want to take leave because a hurricane might come again or a storm. So, but we will take it on. Anything else? If none, this has been a long, long day for all of you. I'm sure that everybody wants a bath and wants to get back home and to get a rest. Let us do so in peace and go forth and continue the effort to make Barbados the best place to live, the best place to work, and the best place to enjoy. Thank you, and God bless you all, and God bless our country. Thank you.
And there you will have it, studios.